And when I look around right now and people are just like so confused and they have no grounding, and I'm just like, what is going on with you all? Because we know what we're up against.
Right.
Why are you acting like we don't know? And so
Right.
we can move with that sense of clarity. I think it is really the most powerful thing. And I think it just gives you a lot more courage, and you're very aware that what this system ultimately is trying to rob from me is my humanity, my joy, activity.
Welcome to Charlie's Toolbox, a podcast for women building sovereign, self-led lives. Here, we explore how art, fashion, media, and mindset become tools for power, clarity, and creative direction. This isn't self-help. This is cultural strategy for women who lead themselves.
I am so excited about this episode. I have been noticing a sort of bleakness, a sort of sadness around what we are facing, and it's justified. But when we learn the system that we are in, we can turn that energy to hope and to strategy. So join me as I speak to Dr. Malaika Tubbs on what American patriarchy is, the system that we're facing, and the history that created this system. Malaika Tubbs is a 2 times New York Times bestselling author and multidisciplinary expert on current and historical understandings of race, gender, and equity. With a PhD in sociology and a master's in multidisciplinary gender studies from the University of Cambridge, in addition to a bachelor's in medical anthropology from Stanford University, Anna translates her academic knowledge into stories that are clear and engaging. Her articles have been published by Time Magazine, New York Magazine, Newsweek, The Guardian, and others. Her first book, The Three Mothers: How the Mothers of MLK Jr., Malcolm X, and James Baldwin Shaped a Nation, came out in 2021. Her second book, Erased: What American Patriarchy Has Hidden from Us, came out in May of this year. Anna's storytelling also takes form in her talks, including her TED Talk that has been viewed 2 million times, as well as the scripted and unscripted screen project she has in development. She lives in Los Angeles with her husband and their 3 kids.
So I want to say first, thank you, Dr. Malaika Tubbs, for coming to this conversation. You have brought to this world 2 books that are going to help this audience, this community, kind of grapple with what they are going through and just kind of have an idea of, what we are facing now and in the future.
Yeah.
So I want to just kind of thank you for that, and just welcome you to our platform.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so grateful. And the only way people get to hear about these books is because of shows like yours, where people are willing to help me share it with people. So I am just really, the pleasure's mine. I'm grateful for the opportunity.
Yes. Well, welcome. So I want to start off. Okay. So the women listening to this podcast right now are experiencing an interesting phenomenon. Okay. We are one of the most educated generations of women in history. We're buying houses at a higher rate than men. We're choosing to stay single. Some of us are opting in or out into motherhood. We're creating non-traditional family systems. We're building careers, choosing ourselves in ways that our mothers and grandmothers couldn't.
Right.
And we're being punished for it. We see Roe versus Wade overturned. We see an increase in incel culture on the rise. Trad wife content is being perpetuated. Trump is back in office. We see maternal mortality rates climbing, especially for Black women.
Yeah.
And overall, rights are being rolled back. The women who are listening are very anxious, and they're confused, and they feel like they're being punished and pushed back into a box that their ancestors, their mothers fought really hard for us to get out of this.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have two books that is explaining what's happening. The Three Mothers, about Louise Little, Alberta King, Bertus Baldwin, the Black mothers who raised Malcolm X, Martin Luther King Jr., and James Baldwin.
Yeah.
Then you have Erased, about American patriarchy.
Mm.
Every interview that I've watched of yours, people they ask you to explain American patriarchy, which I'm going to do the same.
Yeah.
But no one has asked you, how do you show up every day when things seem bleak under this system?
Mm-hmm.
How do you choose freedom, liberation, and fight anyway when you know the system is designed to punish you?
Right.
And what does it look like to hope despite knowing what's going on with this system?
Mm.
And that's kind of, oh, I'm sorry.
No. I was saying it was a beautiful. I'll let you finish.
And so that is kind of what I want to have the conversation today around. How to survive, like what we're up against. How do you choose liberation anyway? And what does that look like? And so I want to kind of begin with mothers.
Yeah.
You started with mothers, and I really want to understand why.
Yeah. Oh gosh, I have so much to say. Okay, I won't get too far ahead into your question.
No, go for it. Go for it. Like, this is an open forum. I want to have a conversation. I read your books. I'm like, oh.
Well, I'm so grateful. So you're probably gonna get so bored of me because I say a lot of the same things, but
No.
I do listen to all the interviews, so I appreciate that so much. But yeah, your question about hope and how do I show up with hope and levity and still, despite what I've written about and what I know about all of the things that you mentioned around the maternal health crisis and all of these attacks against us and very specific strategies to control women, to control mothers, but especially Black women and Black mothers. And so actually, it's my work that gives me a lot of hope because I study these things. I'm very aware, one, of how made up the systems that try to control us are. How they are just, a certain group of people's narrative that they like to tell, and that's their vision for how the world should look and how our country should be organized. But that is just made up. It's fabricated. It's not the natural order. It's not divine, and it's not inevitable. It's actually incredibly fragile. And in addition to studying those systems that control us, inevitably you then study the people who have always seen beyond those systems and who have always seen them for what they are and have been able to recognize that made upness of them. And so those are the people who I'm most inspired by, who, despite the barriers that those systems put in place, despite how violent those systems could be, how murderous those systems could be. I mean, the words aren't even enough to describe how horrific these systems have been, and those who have maintained them, the lengths that they've gone to try to keep them in place. But there have been people who have always stood up courageously, who have always said, this doesn't work for us and we're going to fight for something better, who have said, this is limiting and it doesn't fit our notion of how the world should work. And we believe we can create something else. And we've seen actually a lot of progress in the United States since its founding in 1776. Not enough, right? We're definitely still on this journey and we're fighting for that. But when we think about who has created that progress in our nation, it's not been that those who were in power decided out of nowhere suddenly, today I'm going to give people their rights. And today I'm going to allow people who I didn't see as human beings before today to be treated as human beings. Like, that's not how progress was made. It's been because of people who said, this is not working and we are going to fight for something different. And I'm inspired by that. So that gives me so much hope. And especially the three women who I studied in my first book, Alberta King, Bertus Baldwin, Louise Little, they were all born in the early 1900s. These are Black women, early 1900s. They lived through Jim Crow. They saw lynchings. They saw attacks on their contemporaries, and they were able to sometimes avoid those attacks themselves, but they still were well aware of what could happen to them every single day they stepped out of their home or even within their homes. They witnessed 2 world wars. They lived through the Great Depression. They had their children during the Great Depression. They were participants in their own civil rights movement that led to the civil rights movement that is more famous, that we speak more about in our history books. And they saw their children fight in that civil rights movement. They saw 2 of them saw their children murdered and shot in service to this fight. And 2 of them lived on long enough to then also see the first episode of the Oprah Winfrey Show. Like, this is what they witnessed in their lives. And so when I study them and I see how day by day they not only resisted, but they were able to find love, and they were able to find joy, and they were able to teach their children how to still dream and imagine things that seemed impossible. That is a legacy that I feel really honored to carry. And so it is because I'm so aware of these atrocities, and I'm so aware of how hard things have been, but I'm also so aware that there are others who have done what they needed to do to get us to where we are today. I feel like it's part of my calling to do the same, and I'm honored to do that. And I'm not fooled by even these attacks that we're seeing right now on a national basis. They are a continuance of what we've always been up against. It's not new. And so the people who feel the most hopeless right now, I think, are those who believe somehow this is new, or who have forgotten what has happened throughout American history, or are groups who have not had to deal with it before. And I think that's really where we're seeing a lot of the hopelessness conversation. People who have been privileged enough to have never been called on to participate in the past. And I just want to make sure more people are rooted in reality.
No, I appreciate that. What I loved about these women is how future oriented they were. Like, my grandmother, she has a saying, she's always like, well, every grandmother has a saying, right? But she always tells us there is nothing new under the sun. Like, every time my cousins are complaining, or we have a large group chat where we're talking politics and we're like, describing what's going on. And my grandmother tries to ground us and bring us into like the context of what she grew up in. And so she's always like, there's nothing new under the sun. Like we survived back then, we're going to do it again. So I know you're angry. I know you feel hopeless, but don't feel that way, because this isn't new. Number one. Number two, we all have the strategies. You're talking to a strategy of how to survive.
Yes.
And so when I read your books, and when I read the mothers one, all I kept on thinking about was like, this is a tool book or a strategy of how to survive.
Thank you.
Like how to make it despite.
Yes. Yeah. Because it's really important that we not minimize how horrible things are right now, right? Just because we've seen them before, it doesn't mean it's not scary, it's not horrible. But what your grandmother is saying, it's not that we're giving up and we're just saying, we've been here before and we're going to survive. We've been here before. We've fought against this. We have many strategies in our toolbox. And in fact, we should actually see some of these moments as a response to the wins we've gained and the progress that we've made, because there is such a clear fear of what we are moving towards as a nation. We're moving towards more diversity. We're moving towards more inclusivity. We're moving towards more shared resources across our nation. And that is something that the other side is very concerned about. And they do not want that to be the trend of the United States of America. And so they are really hunkering down. They're returning to their old strategies that they've always had. And they're showing their fear. When President Trump says he's going to go to Texas and redistrict the map and redraw the map and decide that it's going to make it harder for those who want to vote against him to do so, that is a clear sign of weakness right?
Mm-hmm.
He knows he cannot win again, right? If things go fairly, if
Right.
people's voices are heard. And so we need to be aware of those moments where those weaknesses are showing very, very clearly, right?
Mm-hmm.
A
Mm-hmm.
display of vulnerability. That doesn't
Right.
mean we let down our guard. It means that's when we really double down on the strategies that are causing that fear for those who would rather stay in what I talk about as the original social order of the United States, which is American patriarchy. And
Right.
so I think sometimes when we're discussing it solely from like Republican, Democrat, people kind of miss some of the issues. So I'm less about talking about it as when I say that other team, it's not necessarily all Republicans. It's actually
Right.
those who are trying to protect what the founding fathers envisioned for our nation, which was a republic of white elitist men.
Right. And, along with showing the weaknesses, the good thing is they, people who are protecting the system, they aren't as smart. And so they're showing their hands kind of cockily. They're kind of cocky with it.
Yeah.
And so it does give us some ground to fight on,
Mhm.
because they're so boisterous with their
Yeah.
plans. They're so cocky. I mean, even with this recent thing, this plenary, like,
Mhm.
we're hearing and seeing what you guys have in plan, so we can prepare for that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I mean, a part of that strategy of just being so in our faces about it is to shock us, is to
Yeah.
distract us. And it is pretty effective, right? This like loudness that feels like we can't avoid it anywhere
Hmm.
that we go. But yes, if we can start to see those moments more from that perspective that you're describing, which is, wow, they're really just showing their whole hand and
Yeah.
must
Very
not be much more
sloppy.
to it. It feels sloppy. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's been the response from a lot of military leaders, right, to the address of, whatever it was they were doing up there on stage was actually the opposite effect of what they wanted. They thought they
Hmm.
were, saying all of these things that were going to motivate the military leaders of our nation. And instead, the leaders of our armed forces actually left feeling like these leaders have no idea what they're talking about.
Right.
And so it's going to be really interesting to see what happens in the coming years. But I think more people are starting to see the weaknesses. And even those who voted for this, they were promised certain things that
Hmm.
they're not experiencing at all. They wanted lower grocery prices. They wanted more affordability. They
Hmm.
wanted to keep access to certain resources. They didn't realize that they were not the people who this current administration was interested in serving. And so
Right.
I actually think that's going to be a wake up call. And this is the time to welcome a lot of people to the conversation who didn't realize that they were a part of the same team.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And it's something that I actually I'm grappling with, of like, how do you have those conversations? How do you open it without feeling a little resentment, you
Oh,
know? It's like,
yeah,
I feel a little sting. We said it, but y'all didn't listen, but
no,
we are
absolutely.
here now.
Absolutely.
So we have three Black mothers, three women who you outline. They chose to confront the system. And so they were activists, they were thinkers, they were leaders, in their own right.
Yeah.
Um, what through their experience, because one was institutionalized, one
Hmm.
was assassinated, one was erased. What do these three mothers teach us about this system?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And this is why I had to write Erased, because
I see
in
the link.
yeah, correctly. And
Yeah.
that's how I think all my work is going to be. I feel like, whenever my next book will be a growth of this book, and it'll just be this ongoing conversation that I'm having. But when I wrote The Three Mothers, when it came out, so many readers were really shocked by the fact that these women did everything that their sons became famous for long
Mm-hmm.
before their sons even existed. And not necessarily that, the influence of a mother on a child is shocking. It's more shocking that there were so many books written about these men. And it took until 2021 for me, a PhD candidate at the time, to say, hey, we're missing a huge piece of this puzzle. And why has nobody told us this before? That Bertus Baldwin was a writer, that Alberta King, her parents were the ones who established Ebenezer Baptist Church. So the one who was marching and boycotting and believed in her education as a tool for advancing her entire community. Why did nobody tell us that her son was basically the same person as she was?
She was, right.
People tell us that Malcolm X's mother was this radical activist who was a Marcus Garvey, not only follower, but was an organizer of the movement, known by the leader himself, and her husband met because they were organizers. Why didn't anybody tell us this? And so everybody feels this sense of shock at the erasure of these three women. And the question that I was often asked was, how were they erased? How did this happen? And I realized I was describing American patriarchy through their lives and the examples of their lives and this erasure, but that I needed to make it even more obvious what it was that they were up against and that we are still up against today, because Black mothers being erased from our history books and from our knowledge is not something that actually should be shocking when we understand how our nation is set up. We should be upset. We should be disappointed. We should be angry. We should do something about it. But shock actually is a waste of our energy, because shock means we don't understand that it is just one symptom of many of a larger system. And so I thought, okay, I just need to write that book because I keep getting this question. So let me answer that first question with a book and dive deeper into, if people are shocked about this, oh, they must be shocked about a lot of things. I started to realize that they don't understand how all of these things are connected. Like when Roe v. Wade was overturned, and you saw a lot of shock across the nation, people asking similar questions. How did this happen? And how could this happen in the United States of America? And I was sitting there really looking at this thinking, again, this is not shocking. This is sad, angering. We deserve better. But I'm not surprised, and I'm not going to waste my time asking, how did this happen, when President Donald Trump appointed 3 Supreme Court justices and each time said, I'm going to overturn Roe v. Wade. So why are we surprised? Are we just not paying attention? And then I realized, oh, this shock is also by design. Like the system itself that is so obvious to me has erased itself on purpose so that we think that these are unavoidable outcomes, that this is just how the world works. And you hear people saying things like that, even in the way we might talk about children, boys will be boys, things like this, as if these are just the way that things roll out and play out. And so then I thought, okay, I'm going to just tell everybody, like, how was the nation founded? Let's just learn. I'm not trying to blame anybody. I'm not trying to point any fingers. Let's just go back to how the foundation of our nation is established. And look at the founding fathers. They were the underdogs. Nobody was expecting them to win the Revolutionary War. Nobody was expecting this. And when they do win, there are all these different people throughout our nation who are thinking, well, look what just happened there. Maybe we can fight for the thing we need. Maybe we can advance our rights as well. And the founding fathers, are very fearful of that. They're concerned that this revolutionary spirit is spreading across different groups. And so they think about how they can maintain power and control in their nation, and that is what they had fought for when they were fighting the Revolutionary War. And so with everything they design, the Constitution, any laws that come out of this, the systems that come out of this, are trying to maintain control in their hands. And so in the Constitution, they decide who gets to be treated as a human being in the United States. This was the most important thing for them to establish, first and foremost, who gets to be human. And they say men are allowed to own land. Men are allowed to vote. Men can represent themselves in business decisions. men are the most important part of our nation because they are the ones that will pass on their status through their children. Women are not in the Constitution. This was by design. The founding fathers wanted to build a republic of men where women were not participating politically. The way we know that they were at least defining women in their lives, though, and still acknowledging their humanity, were in the letters that they wrote to their wives and to their daughters, where they're stating that those women are meant to be protected, they're supposed to be docile, and they are supposed to reproduce the power of men through children.
Right.
And by no means are these women supposed to vote or participate politically. And so they set it up like this, again, by design. They're only acknowledging two groups of people in the United States, themselves and the women who are attached to them.
Right.
But they're clearly not including, by these two definitions of a very flawed and limited binary, they're not including people who were enslaved. They're not including indigenous people. They are not including immigrants from that point forward because they've decided now we're cutting it off. Now that we're here, we're cutting it off.
We're done. Yeah.
Have access to this. They're not including poor white people. They are specifically and strategically saying not everybody gets access to this binary that we have in the United States around what it means to be a human being. But they do tell these other groups that they can assimilate to the two groups that are recognized, that this is their path to maybe someday being treated as human beings or someday having access to the same resources. If you can play one of these roles well enough, then maybe you'll know what it is. And maybe if you can ascend this ladder that we're building, right? Because it's a false ladder. It doesn't actually exist. It's not like God decided this ladder was how we should all organize ourselves. They create a ladder and they say, if you can ascend it, you know, despite all the barriers we're going to put in place, then maybe you might be treated as a human being. And so even those who were not originally served by this social order, they sometimes really protect it because they think I just have to do my role well enough, play my role well enough, and I could do this. I could have these things too. So if I don't have those things, it's not that I'm going to blame the system or that ladder. Instead, I'm going to blame myself. And I'm also going to blame other people for keeping me from accessing those resources. And so if we just think about that as the foundation of our nation, and this isn't even a disputed thing, you know,
no.
Male historians have described this Republic of Men. White male historians have said the exact same thing. The founding fathers wanted to create a republic of white men.
Right.
Let's all just remember, like no one is actually arguing about that.
Right.
So why can we not realize how that foundation is still playing a role to this day? Where did we miss the understanding that American patriarchy was the foundation and we are still living in it? How, like, where was that thread cut? And so this is what Erased is trying to solve, is I'm making that thread obvious again so that we stop being caught off guard by the patriarchy that we currently live in. That is not only about gender. It's also about excluding groups of color. And it's also about controlling even white people. And it also answers the question that so many people have, which is why are white women, you know, voting against their interests? And why would they vote for President Donald Trump, for example? Well, in the original social order, they're at least recognized. They have a role to play.
Right.
And they want to protect that.
Right.
Whether they know that or consciously or subconsciously, that is what they are doing. And so when we can just be really clear on what that initial design was, everything that we're seeing play out now makes complete sense. It's not shocking. It's not surprising. But when I talk about those two groups, one group are the people who want to protect that initial social order. The other group are those who see beyond it and are trying to break that social order so that everybody can have access to resources in the United States and everybody can receive humane treatment and everybody could be included in that initial definition that they were just keeping to themselves in the Constitution.
Yeah. And so I have 3 points that I want to point out because thank you for breaking that down. Okay. Number one, I love that you are highlighting that you're not shocked by what's going on, because there is a confidence in the system that it's going to be fair, and it's not. And what that kind of reminds me of this recent conversation that everyone was up in an uproar with was Ta-Nehisi Coates and Ezra Klein.
Right.
And what you said reminded me of that conversation of one person who understands the system, understands the historical context, knows that this is how it's going to be ran because it was designed this way, and someone who believes in the system, thinks it's fair, sees progress as it being fair, and being shocked that it's not.
Right.
So that reminded me of that. And the last point I want to make, and then I'm going to ask a question is, not point, but question I want to ask. The work that you do, because in my past life, I was a sociology graduate student.
Oh, I love
it. So I did a lot of research. The amount of work that is required for both books.
Yeah.
Can you walk us through that?
Yes, I just want to warn you that I sound like a major dork when I walk through this, but yes.
No, because it's American patriarchy as a concept is a huge idea.
Yeah.
So for you to even take on that endeavor is like, number one, brave.
Thank you.
Number two, a lot of work. And for you to break it down in such a way that to make it digestible for people.
Yeah.
I'm a fan. I'm a fan. So if you could walk us through that just to kind of help people understand what it looks like to take an idea that's purposely hidden, women who are purposely erased, and bring it to the light so that you can understand what you're up against.
Absolutely. I just appreciate that so much. And I really am. I'm such a huge nerd. And I am really of being a nerd. But I will say before I dive into this research question that for people who haven't read my books, they sometimes immediately assume it's going to be really academic, right? Because I have a PhD and I'm a dork, and I love that about myself. But I also want to make sure everybody knows that it is really important to me that my work is enjoyable to read and engaging to read. And I've always been kind of at odds with academics who are, in my opinion, performing this kind of academic knowledge, and they're always hiding behind academic jargon, and they're not really saying anything because it's just a bunch of words that don't make any sense to anybody else, and that's never what I'm trying to accomplish. And it's really important to me that my work feel like an actual journey that you want to go on with me, and that you get to connect with human emotion and experiences. So before I answer all the research, just know that it is not highly academic in that way. It's well researched, and that's still very important to me, but it's language that I feel like anybody can connect with. And that is just one of my priorities always. Okay, so now I can get into the nerdy part.
And I can attest, it is very enjoyable, both of them. So
that's what I was fishing for. I appreciate it. So the three mothers, it was a real challenge, like you said, because these women were completely disregarded by historians and by writers before me. And there was nothing out there about them. Like when I would Google them, now you can Google them because I wrote the book, there's details out in the world. But beforehand, if you Googled them, there were very few pieces of information. There were estimates on when they were born. We knew obviously when their famous sons were born, so that gave me a little bit of insight into at least when they were giving birth. And then there were some estimates on the years that they passed away. But in between those kind of landmark moments, there wasn't much that I could find. And if I did find something, it was out of context. It didn't fully make sense. And so, yeah, their lives had not been protected. And so I was going into this really trying to reconstruct lives in the same way that, for example, Margot Lee Shetterly does in Hidden Figures, in this like beautiful book that went on to become this amazing film. And I was also trying to emulate Warmth of Other Suns by Isabel Wilkerson, where she goes and tells this biography of 3 different people who were part of the Great Migration. But the problem was that those books, they could interview the subjects that they were writing about.
Right.
I could not. So I was trying to do this awesome thing and had not the same level of resources. So I had to start first by thinking about the sons and any books that they'd written, any speeches they'd given. I was combing through, reading them, and finding any evidence of their mothers. So I was able to pull a few more details from there. Then from the sons, I moved on to anybody who was an expert in one of the sons. So I was reaching out to academics who had written books about them. And there are a lot of people out there because books about them come out almost every year.
Yeah, they do. They do.
Like, what else is there to say? But great. So I was interviewing those authors and sending them emails, seeing what they were willing to share with me. Many of them were very gracious with their work and were able to share archives with me. So I would pull from those as well. Then I contacted local historians in the places where each of the women lived, and some of them helped me find birth certificates and death certificates and land deeds. So not only for the women, I was also trying to track their families because, for example, Bertus Baldwin did not show up in any of the census data, but her mother did and her sister did. And I knew from one of James Baldwin's writings that Bertus called her sister, her mother, because Bertus's mother passed away, because I found the birth certificate for Bertus and I found a death certificate for her mother, and they were the same year and month. So I believe that Bertus's mother passed away in childbirth. But then I knew that, and I knew that James Baldwin had said that she called her sister her mother. So if I could find her sister in the census data, I could also track Bertus. So this is like the kind of research that I had to do to fill in all of these. And that's just one example of it. And then finally, when I was really prepared and I knew the landscape of what was out there and what I could find, I started contacting the family members. So children of the women and grandchildren. And there were varying degrees of comfort with talking to me, which makes a lot of sense. You know, in any of our lives, if someone, you know, called me and said, I want to talk about your mom, and also called my siblings, one of us would be like, yeah. And one of us might be like, no, thank you. So that was how it went with the families. And so I was really fortunate to be able to interview some family members. And that's how I started to fill in more of the blanks. And the final part I'll say about that is anything that I couldn't find about them specifically in a year of their life, I went and did deep research into what was happening in that city, on that day, like finding old newspaper articles and really starting to understand events that were happening and the context around them that would have impacted their lives. And that's how I wrote The Three Mothers. And with Erased, it was the complete opposite problem, because
that's a lot of information.
Patriarchy is everywhere. Like, it was the complete opposite issue, where once I told my editor that I wanted to write this book and this was going to be my next book, and she was like, I love it, great, go ahead and go forth and write it. When I sat down to try to write it, I felt immediately overwhelmed, because I thought, oh goodness, maybe it's easier for me to actually do the ones where there isn't a lot of evidence and I have to find the evidence. This is endless evidence, and like, it's in everything we do. It impacts our lives in every single way. And so I had to really root myself and think, okay, maybe I can tell my reader how I came to understand American patriarchy in my life. Like, how was my mom influenced by this? How did she come to see it? How did I see it as a little girl? And that might be my guide through this book. And that from that starting point, maybe the stories that are supposed to be in this, because I'm not going to be able to include everything, but the stories that are supposed to be in here will come to me naturally. And that's what ended up happening. So just as an example, I start with my mom's story in Erased and how she came to understand American patriarchy. And then I was thinking, okay, my mom is from Clarkston, Washington. How did Clarkston get its name? Oh, it was the Lewis and Clark expedition. Let me look into that. And then I started learning about Sacagawea, and then I started to think about, the attacks on Indigenous women in particular and Indigenous people generally. And then at the end of that chapter, I think, oh, who sent Lewis and Clark on this expedition? Oh, it was Thomas Jefferson. And then I started to talk about Mount Rushmore. And so that's just to give you kind of a teaser and a preview of how the book is laid out. That's how I did that research. A lot of it was online, finding the archives, having access through USC, which I'm so grateful for, all of the online archives that I needed to have access to. So it was combing through like countless articles and really just building my knowledge around the stories that were naturally coming subsequently from the chapter that I was finishing, and realizing, oh, okay, that brings up so many other questions. And I just felt that I would know when we'd reach the ending. And so that's how I wrote Erased. So it was also very intense, but very different process between the two.
Yeah. Thank you for breaking this down, because sometimes, when you get the finished product, you don't really know what the labor of love of like what is required to bring this into one piece, so I'm so glad that you walked us through that. I have a question for you.
Yes.
I've been thinking about this. So we are recording this in October 2025. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you think we need a name for what this style of patriarchy is? Or should we just call it this system? Because there's always new cultural codes, like every era, decade, minute, hour, there's always something new that it adopts or adapts to.
Yeah.
And one thing I know about patriarchy, it is great at hiding itself, shielding itself. Should we have a name for it? What do we call this iteration of American patriarchy?
That's such a good question. And it's so interesting because thus far, before my book, we always were just saying the patriarchy. This is always how people were talking about it. And what I realize is that we use that term as if it's a global term, as if the way patriarchy shows up across the world is the same in each nation. And I realized that is a huge mistake for those of us who are fighting against patriarchy. We actually need to contextualize patriarchy as much as possible in each of the locations where it shows up, because that's how we will ultimately defeat patriarchy globally, is when we have unique strategies for each of the places where we are confronting it. So I'm not saying, in my book that American patriarchy is worse than other patriarchies or better. Like, I'm not actually interested in a hierarchy of patriarchies.
Yeah,
like, but I am saying, hey, let's ask an interesting question about patriarchy in the US, because we've never asked that before, really. And it's one of the ways in which it's disguised itself and has hidden itself, because the US likes to pretend that we are very progressive in fact. So, because we don't have the Taliban in the United States, people would say, oh, look at all the rights that women have in the United States. So we can't really say that that's patriarchy. And then you have people who are dismissing feminist activists who are calling out what they're experiencing and saying, well, it's really not that bad. And look how far we've come, and look compared to other nations. And so that's actually why I am introducing the term American patriarchy. And I think I'm the first person to do that. I have not seen that put together in that way. And the Americanness of it also being that it's not only gender here, whiteness in the United States, and how that's tied to legacies of slavery and legacies of erasing Indigenous people and genocide and all of this in the United States. So for me, that's like the term that I think we need to describe what we've always been up against and what we're still up against now. It's always been a very unique form of a gendered hierarchy, which is rooted in the Founding Fathers' original vision and hasn't actually shifted all that much since then. Because if we look at any of the attacks on people in the United States, it's always a replication of that original social order. If we're seeing attacks on trans people like we are right now, It's because trans people make it very clear that this gender binary that American patriarchy relies on
Right.
is not
Builds his power on.
exactly is not a stable foundation.
Mm-hmm.
There is more to us as human beings, and there are other options available to us. Trans people today still remind us that before the founding fathers wrote the Constitution, they had to try to erase and deny indigenous belief systems that
Mm-hmm.
acknowledged people beyond the binary. They had to
Right.
build that. In order to build something, you have to erase anything that tells you differently, because you have
Right.
to protect this fragile thing. And so we're still seeing that. We still see a continuance of a history of denying. Let's particularly look at Black women. Many people trying to push Black women out of a definition of womanhood that
Mm-hmm.
was protected by this original social order, and trying to take children away from Black women, interrupting Black families. So American patriarchy relies a lot on women to become mothers, right? But we constantly see attacks on Black mothers in the United
Mm-hmm.
States, our relationship with our
Right.
children.
Right.
American patriarchy relies on the nuclear family to reproduce the national model within our homes, where there's a head
Right.
of household who is telling everybody what to do, and there's a woman who is domesticated, and there's children that are all supposed to just follow and continue the legacy of their father.
Mm-hmm.
Well, clearly, we're not actually protecting that nuclear family again for Black people, immigrant
Mm-hmm.
people, gay people. Like, that nuclear family protection is not afforded to everybody. And that's still what we're seeing to this day. And so my answer to that is, I would love to see us all start to say, rather than the patriarchy, which feels to me very vague,
Mm-hmm.
saying American patriarchy with the definition that I'm offering.
I like that a lot. I like that because it localizes it. And so you know exactly what you're up against, and you're not, because one thing I noticed, like if I have a conversation online, I have
Yeah.
a very global platform,
Yeah.
and I have women come to me and say, well, that really doesn't apply to me. And I understand that. I understand. I'm like, yeah, in the context, it doesn't.
Yeah.
But you do, but having a definition like that can give like a foundation or a framework for us to have a conversation like, yeah, this is patriarchy.
Yeah.
This is American patriarchy. This is what we're up against. We can have a conversation. We can exchange notes
Yeah.
about what we are facing, but it doesn't necessarily apply to how you're living,
And
what
how
you're going against.
learn from each other. I completely agree with what you're saying, because it doesn't deny our sisterhood with those who are up against patriarchy across the world. Instead, it says, here are some strategies we really need to hone in on, because these are the laws we're coming up against. This is the system we're coming up against. That's very different. American patriarchy is very different than Indian patriarchy, for example, or Mexican patriarchy, or French patriarchy. And I'm actually going to be speaking at a women's forum in Paris in a couple of weeks. And I'm really excited because I can speak to why, as a global movement against patriarchy, I want to see more works come out where we get real clear and specific about how patriarchy was written into our national systems. Because, in the US, we've never had a female president. That's not something other countries
No.
can.
Yeah, they can say that.
Leaders, right? And so there's something very unique about American patriarchy. And I think if we could even have a conference where all different experts in their nation's patriarchy came and said, oh, look at some of the things that are different, and now look at some of these commonalities, and now let's come up with a global strategy, it will be so much more powerful. And in our conversation about American patriarchy, it reminds a lot of people that they are not served by this model. So, for instance, Black men were not meant to be protected by American patriarchy. And so often in our conversations, if we're talking patriarchy and a lot of people are like, oh, F men, and they're, they're all horrible. You see a lot of men who then feel, like they have to get really defensive.
Right.
Like,
Slighted. Yeah.
like, what do you mean? Like, I've been hurt in this nation. And it's been interesting because, whenever you write a book or put something out, there's a lot of people who just read the headline and they don't actually read the context. And I experienced a lot of Black men in particular thinking that I was attacking them, that I was going to come and say, you're oppressing women and all of these things. And I said, read a little further into what I'm saying.
Right.
I'm saying you are also a victim of American patriarchy.
Right. You're not, you're trying to be a part of a system or uphold a system.
Yeah.
But that you're not included in that in those protections.
Yeah.
So
like,
you
why
got
are
to
you
be just as critical. Yeah.
why are you coming out against me?
Right.
You deserve better too. Right. And
Right.
so you actually then have all these people who are like so defensive of that word, and they feel almost like so attacked by that word, versus us saying we are speaking about a system as it was designed.
Right.
I'm not talking about you as an individual. Let's all together look at that system, because
Right.
when you look at that system, you realize it is hurting every single one of us, even those who were supposed to be the beneficiaries of it. And you see white, elite, rich men who are often very depressed, who are often drug dependent, who, we're then also seeing poor white men, and obviously their struggles with not understanding why they aren't dominating in the way that they were told they were supposed to dominate. And many of them choose to pick up guns and hurt other people because they don't see how the system isn't working for them either. And so, yes, when I say American patriarchy, I'm like, let's just all come on, let's agree this system didn't work.
It's not working for us. It's not working for us.
It isn't working. Exactly.
Right. And you have to see the system for what it is.
Yeah.
So we are discussing kind of the macro level, right? I am curious about your work on an individual and personal level. So, and I always have a question. People who write about tough things, this is one of my favorite questions because I want to know this.
Yeah.
How do you get so close to like the work, the knowledge intellectually, and not allow it to impact how you show up daily? For example, like I have a friend who wrote extensively about American slavery. And I read it, and I am both inspired and appalled.
Right.
And sometimes when I'm reading it, I have to take a step back. Like, it's just too much. This is way worse than I thought it was. It's very intense because sometimes the violence is unfathomable to me.
Yeah.
How do you be so knowledgeable about this without being bleak?
For me, I do think that knowledge actually allows you to feel less heavy, to be honest, because it is, you then are just so clear about it. Like, you're not confused about it. You don't have any sense of questioning what you're up against. And it makes me think of the writers who gave me so much inspiration, have given, millions of people so much inspiration, but people like Audre Lorde and Toni Morrison and Bell Hooks, may they all rest in peace. They all wrote with such clarity. There was no sense of like, I'm a little confused, or here's a question I have, or let me try to, it was just like.
Right. No, they did. That is a good point.
This is what it is.
This is what it is. Yeah.
What we're up against. This is what's happened.
And there's no happy ending. Like, right.
Exactly. And that was what they were more invested in. And so that's what it feels like for me as well. I have such a sense of clarity. And when I look around right now and people are just like so confused and they have no grounding, and I'm just like, what is going on with you all? Because we know what we're up against.
Right.
Why are you acting like we don't know? And so when we can move with that sense of clarity, I think it is really the most powerful thing. And I think it just gives you a lot more courage, and you're very aware that what this system ultimately is trying to rob from me is my humanity, my joy, activity. And so you can laugh in the face of that and say, and look at me, I'm still joyful. I'm still here, having these beautiful babies and showing them what it means to live in this life, even when there are people who are trying to take away our humanity, right? You have to be able to see it for what it is with such clarity. I won't allow that to happen. I won't allow
Right.
them to rob me of that. And so, I can read something that's really horrible and I can write about something that's really horrible,
Mm-hmm.
and also see it in everything that it is. I have no question. And I
Mm-hmm.
will never, align myself with something, like these moments that are atrocities that are horrific. I think I'm very clear on my purpose, which is also I think important in a fight like this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I really do. I have a lot of joy, and I feel honored to continue the legacy of the writers that I mentioned. A couple times now, the Three Mothers has shown up on lists with, Sister Outsider and
Mm-hmm.
All About Love
What
and
an
Things.
honor.
Oh,
Yeah.
God, the way for me when I see that, I'm like, oh my goodness.
Yeah. I would be so geeked.
Sometimes it's just like random lists where writers or somebody saying, these are the ones to read about Black history,
Mm-hmm.
the ones to understand Black women, or these are the texts that will inspire you. And when I see my book on those lists, I just feel clear
Mm-hmm.
about what I'm
I
supposed to
like
be
that.
doing.
I like that. That's a good word for the
Thank
work and for like the philosophy behind it. I love that. So
you.
I have two questions and then one question and then we're going to wrap it up.
Okay, sounds good. Because I do have to go in my 4 minutes. I'm so sorry.
Okay. No worries. No worries. So, one, you say in a race is all made up.
Yes.
And we need to make up something different. You are developing different things. You've written policy, you're developing a show, you are recovering more stories about, patriarchy, erased mothers. What becomes possible when you understand the system you're up against and you build hope anyway?
Mm-hmm. Everything becomes possible
Yes.
because you realize it's all, like you said, it's all made up.
Mm-hmm.
So the question you then live with, it's not, oh, what am I supposed to do with these laws? Like a lot of people right now are like, but it's law now, and that's so terrible. Like it's legal for this to happen or that, whatever. And you're like, yeah, no, all of this was legal. Like
Right,
slavery,
right.
removing children from their mothers was legal. Like we all have to stop thinking that man-made law is the ultimate, determination of what we all can or cannot do. Like it's just not.
Right,
That's just
right,
not true.
right.
And so when we're aware of that, we can think, okay, what can I create? What can I do differently? And it feels a little bit like I sound a little bit like a broken record, but what Black women have done in this nation is that it's been, let me just create something else because this isn't working. If
Right.
you're told, hey, you're not human and your kids aren't human, and we're just going to take them and give them to somebody else and like remove them from you,
Mm-hmm.
your immediate sense is going to be that's made up. It's not
Right.
going to be, oh, the law says that, so it must be true.
I must, yeah.
It's
Let me get in
instead,
line. Like, no.
it's
Yeah.
it's wrong and I need to create something else. And so if more of us can have that mentality of that's not working for me, so let me introduce something else, let me run for office, let me be a policymaker, or let me create systems within this system. We've also seen that throughout Black American
Mm-hmm.
history, especially in the Black church. This was a nation within a nation, because in Black church, you're not going to be denying the humanity of the members of that church. Instead, we're
Right.
meeting each other's needs. You're providing resources. You're bringing education to people where in the nation it was illegal to do so.
Mm-hmm.
But we have to be able to see when things are created to punish and not to protect, and ask ourselves what we're going to do differently in the face of that.
Thank you so much. I'm going to wrap this up. I usually end with one question and you don't have to answer it. You can answer if you want to. I always feel like the work that we do is for like an inner kid, someone in us, some girl in us, some person in us that loves this. What is it for her?
That's so beautiful. I've always been a storyteller. I've always really enjoyed, I think, the art of storytelling, like reading books, watching TV, coming up with something creative, and knowing like these were just people that were writing down interesting ideas and bringing those to life. It wasn't anything exceptional, like that I couldn't reach myself. You know what I mean? And so I think also of the little girl I was who was, moving from country to country and had this amazing experience where my parents really wanted us to see everything firsthand as much as we could. And so any opportunity that opened up for them, they would be like, all right, we're going to go and be nomads. And I was always so passionate about meeting new people and learning about different people and cultures and celebrating our differences. And that is what I feel even since I was a little girl. I want that for more people. I want people to be comfortable with difference, celebrate difference. And my storytelling is always in service to that. And I think that's the little girl that I'm still, trying to, not trying to, I think she's proud. And as long as I can continue to do that, I think I'll be happy.
Yay. Well, thank you for that. Thank you, Dr. Tubbs, for your time. I'm so appreciative of it.
Thank you so much.
And on that note, we'll take care.
That concludes our exploration for today. I hope this conversation has sparked something within you. A new insight, a challenge to the status quo, or a deeper connection to your own radical vision. Remember, Charlie's Toolbox is more than a podcast. We are a cultural studio, a movement, a revolution. If you're ready to dive deeper, to access exclusive tools, and to build alongside a powerful assembly of visionary women, visit charliestoolbox.com to discover the Radical Atelier. Thank you for listening. Until next time, keep crafting your sovereignty.